Welcome to episode 210 of the Left Behind Game Club. This week we play Hermit and Pig. Let's get right into it.
You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to Left Behind Game Club, our never-ending attempt to make sure that no game is left behind. I'm your host, Jacob McCourt, and today I have one friend with me. He's my colleague from my other podcast. It's Joseph Hooper. Hello.
Hello. Long time no see, as it pertains to this podcast, at least.
Yeah, tell me, do you remember the last podcast you were on for the Left Behind Game Club?
Oh, I can't even. I'm trying to think back at what game could it have possibly been.
Okay, why don't we do this? I'm going to look it up, and while I do that, please introduce yourself to the folks at home if they don't know who the hell you are.
Yeah, if you don't know who the hell I am, my name is one Joseph Hooper, resident of the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, Washington. I like video games a lot, which is why I do a lot of content related to video games. As Jacob alluded, I am on the Crossplay Conversations podcast with him. I was on this podcast at one time, I believe. I have no recollection of what game it was.
You've been on this podcast 2 times, my friend.
Oh, 2 times. 2 times I've been on this podcast. And then I also have a YouTube channel / website / whatever, can'tpause.com or youtube.com / not ampersand, @ Is it just called an @ sign? What is that called?
It's called an @ sign, brother.
that literally doesn't sound technically correct. Were they we made this and it's just called the @ sign?
I think so.
That's kind of weird. Ampersand is not called the and sign. You know what I mean? We're completely off topic.
We are so off topic.
What episodes were they? Did you find it?
You've been on episode 82 about Gato Roboto. You came on with your co-host from the Player podcast, Arsene Lapka. And then you also came on Pokemon Snap, the two of you as well.
Oh, shout out Pokemon Snap.
Well, hey, thanks for coming back on the show. Today we're talking about Hermit and Pig. It's a game developed and published by Heavy Lunch Studio. This one just came out when we're recording this. It's coming out a little later, but on February 5th of 2026. And this one, as it stands, is available on Steam. We start the show like we start all of our shows with the fast pitch. It's a 1-sentence pitch of the game that we are about to talk about. So let me start on this one, and Hoop, you can give it a second to percolate. The way I think about Hermit and Pig is a GBA-style RPG that is funny as hell. That's the way let's add the word bite-sized. It's a bite-sized, top-down RPG that's funny as hell. So that's my pitch. Hooper, what's yours?
My pitch for Hermit and Pig is essentially what modern Pokemon should be in a lot of ways. It's a lofty pitch, but that's kind of my pitch.
Okay.
I'll explain more later.
Pitch. Okay. So we're going to go through and talk about this game both from a gameplay story lens, but what I'd love to just maybe set up for folks first is the world and the gameplay loop. So you play as the titular Hermit and Pig, who is a man who does not like people, who sits in the forest and loves mushrooms, and hangs out with his pig who cannot talk. And all of a sudden, their world is disrupted by this evil corporation that is dropping stuff in their forest. You find out more as time goes, but that's the general setup. And very much like a game like a Mario and Luigi, you end up taking on different sorts of creatures, small, large, from a bear all the way down to a little bug, and you do so in a sort of action-based role-playing game style. It's a 6-ish hour game that I think both of us played on Steam and both of us got codes for. So I did want to say, did you get a code for this one?
I did, yeah.
Yeah, so we both want to disclose that we both did get codes on this one. So thank you to the team at Heavy Lunch for sending those over. That's the setup. Any big parts that I missed?
No, that is, very similar. You kind of meet, different little casts and crews as you go on. And I do want to emphasize that there's like a very comedic tone to the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a really short, compact adventure you go on. There's a lot of like, turn-based battles, but then there's like a really fun atmospheric tone with a lot of really interesting characters that you meet along the way as well.
The fun thing about Hermit, we've said he doesn't like people. The battles happen whether it is a physical fisticuffs battle or if you just get into a piece of dialogue. Every time Hermit will engage in the same way, where it is a battle, even though you're just picking dialogue options. And if you say the wrong thing that's cringe, you take damage.
Yeah. Which honestly, I'm not mad about taking damage, but I do hate that you don't see the cringe dialogue through. Like, you kind of say it and they're like, dang, that was cringe. And then you just kind of move on. I wish there was like more branching paths of like, oh, I'm going to react to the cringe thing you said. And we're just going to kind of keep playing on the bit because that would have been hilarious. Some of the cringe options are like, dang, I really want to press this. This.
This weirdly reminded me a lot of Thank Goodness You're Here, although not as extreme. I feel like that game is off the deep end. But this, if that's the deep end, this is the shallow end of sort of the same comedic style.
Yeah, 100%. I could 100% see Hermit and Pig being like a Cartoon Network type show, or like just like a general like, animated show in today's modern era. I think it'd be pretty funny, and it'd probably do decently. I mean, animation doesn't really bring in the big bucks, but it'd do decently well in this day and age.
And this thing is hand animated. My understanding is the team is relatively small and from the UK. I'm going to validate that. I think that was the case. But it very much, in addition to capturing me from a story standpoint, from a dialogue standpoint, from a battle system, which we'll dive into, but it actually is like really great to look at too. Yeah,
I mean, like I said, it's what modern Pokemon should be. Like I know.
Elaborate, my friend. Get into it.
Yeah.
Why?
Essentially, like when we have Pokemon today, there's a lot of requests from a lot of different audiences. I think the biggest request is, it needs voice acting. The graphics need to be better. But in some ways, I'm kind of like, hey, if you kind of just iterate on the mechanics that you have been putting in these games for well over a decade, multiple decades now, like we'd be good. So like Hermit and Pig really modernizes like the turn-based combat, makes it way more engaging. I think Pokemon is a little bit brainless at times, especially if you're over the age of like 12 or 10 even maybe. And like I said, the dialogue and like just the general tone just feels a little more aware of like what's humorous in 2026. Whereas I play a Pokemon and it's like, I'm just like not entertained. Even if I was a kid, I can't see myself being so enthralled with the dialogue because it just seems so like robotic and like lowest common denominator of I'm good guy. I like these things. This is my personality. And Hermit and Pig really has that, this person is a ratchety old lady, but she's still like on the good team, and this person has this like little quirk and whatnot. So it really takes that like retro Pokemon aspect and kind of just solves all of the things that have kind of stayed stagnant over that franchise for a long time, and brings them into the modern era.
Having just played Pokemon Scarlet for the first time and gone through that whole thing, I am completely with you that game needs a refresh from a story standpoint. Hopefully we get that with Pokemon Winds and Waves when that comes out in 2027. I've validated, I can't tell if Heavy Lunch Studios is in the UK or in the US, but it definitely feels like that sort of British humor, which is why either Cartoon Network humor, which is usually American, or like shallow end of Thank Goodness You're Here, which is more UK.
Yeah.
That is what the story has done. That's what the world feels like. That's the comparison to Pokemon. I would love to know the battle system. Definitely drew me in, and it's something that surprised me with its depth, and also I wasn't expecting to have to pay attention to this RPG every single second I was playing it. Is that how you felt about it, and what did you love about the combat system?
Yeah, the combat system was probably like one of my favorite surprises of this game, besides like the comedy. I usually don't laugh at a lot of comedy in games, so that was a nice surprise as well. But like for this combat system, it does kind of start off as like, hey, this is like the rock paper scissors type situation that you see in Pokemon. I'm like, okay, all right. Like once you figure out the matchups, like there's an ant. Okay, you step on the ant. It's not really hard to figure out. So it's like, okay, once I figure out these things, then I assume I'm going to go on autopilot. But no, it actually gets really complex as you go on, in pretty much every facet, which I really love. From like the weakness perspective, you have enemies that aren't, apparently obvious what their weakness is. So you have to kind of use this like scan ability to detect their weakness, or you kind of just have to guess or really think about what they most likely will be weak to based off of what they are. You have to input the combos almost like it's Street Fighter in a way. Not that complicated. You don't have to do like a quarter circle or anything.
But there is a bit of a timing aspect to it where you really have to pay attention, know what you're doing, and get into a flow. Yeah,
and what Jake was talking about is they're on your turn, a timer immediately starts. So you have a timer that is whatever you want to do during that turn, whether it's use an item, look up something, or attack. You have to do it before that timer runs out, or the enemy will immediately take their turn again. And the fact that there are combos for each one of your moves, to successfully do one of your actual named attacks, you need to remember what the button combination is. And as the game goes, your attacks get stronger, but the combinations get longer. And as someone like me who has very bad short-term memory,
brother, I'm with you right there.
It was a struggle because the timer gets faster by the end of the game, and the combos are just long enough to where I'm like, dude, I do not remember. I have to go into the book, look at the combo, and then you're really trying to input these things fast. So like Jacob is saying, it's not like an autopilot thing. Like you have to stay actively engaged, and especially towards the end when you were kind of forced to use some of your items or your mushrooms to kind of manage the situation as well. It's not Pokemon where you're just bulldozing through the game and you don't have to ever use any items. Sometimes you need to wake Hermit up or fix that stun because it actively impedes your combat.
There's a couple of inputs that I kind of got to know the 3 buttons. So there's, like you said, 3 button, 4 button, 5 buttons for sort of good level damage, best level damage by the end of the game. And like a stomp, for example, kind of makes sense where it's like you go up and then down twice. So I kind of would get to know 1 or 2, but for most of them, part of me I thought, should I print out to sit next to me a little printout that has the different inputs? Because like you, I'm too dumb to remember a 3 button input in the heat of the moment.
Yeah. And, just to add to it, like I was mentioning, the status effects actively affect your gameplay. It's not like your character's stunned, so they just may skip their turn. When you're stunned, you have to hold down your button inputs, which means you still get to attack, but it just ratchets up the intensity of like, oh, if I don't remember this combo, I'm kind of screwed, because what used to take me a second to put in 3 buttons now might take me 3 seconds because I have to hold down each button of the combo. Or for
if
when
blinded,
you're confused,
for example,
go ahead.
Your vision is obscured and the outside of your screen is black, and then you can only see sort of the center of the screen. So you could do some things, but if you're looking at your sort of your mushrooms, all the different mushrooms you can play, you actually can only see the ones that are in the center of the screen, and you have a lot of trouble around the edges.
Yeah. So just things like that really kind of, I think, take the game even further than like something like a Sea of Stars or like kind of like that Mario and Luigi RPG aspect where it's like, oh, I press a button at a specific time and I'll, get better defense or I'll do more damage. And that was great. But now the fact that you're actually remembering combos and having to actually like ward off specific status effects, like it's like you yourself is affected because of whatever the status is inflicted upon you, which is pretty cool. I really, really like that.
For a game that's only like 6 hours long, there was a wildly surprising amount of depth beyond the things that you've said. Each of your characters, so Hermit and Pig, have their own abilities and also have their own specials that they gain throughout the game. So there's these special blue mushrooms that you end up gathering as you go, and they're sort of tied to story moments where every time you get one, it adds things to what you can do in battle. So example, the first time Hermit picks one up, he can do, instead of doing 1 attack per turn, he can do 2. the pig, for example, not only does one of the mushrooms, very light story spoilers, eventually lets him talk to humans, which is very funny for dialogue, but also he can gain abilities like his spy that can show some of the affinity weaknesses, ends up being something that if you have multiple people in the battle, it goes from, hey, I need to use my spy on every single individual creature, to, hey, I've eaten one of these blue mushrooms, I can use my spy against everyone that's in front of me. So I did appreciate how quickly the ramp up progression hit and how much depth they fit into like a little 6-hour game.
Yeah, perfectly paced in my opinion. And like you said, like I feel like it was that perfect balance, that perfect push and pull of like, oh wow, like this is really gonna change. Like when I could do 2 attacks per thing, I was like, oh shoot, like I'm gonna be OP. But then the enemies kind of responded in turn in terms of like how difficult they were, how much health they had. So I really liked like the song and dance of like, hey, we're gonna make you feel more powerful, but at the same time it's not gonna be a cakewalk because we're gonna adjust the difficulty appropriately.
And so, like you said, the enemy really scale as you go. Your character doesn't get wildly stronger as you go through the game. You know, you maybe at the start you're at 20 HP, and by the end your hermit has 30 or 35 HP. But you really learn how to, you know, because there even is like a countering and a parry system that works into the game as you go later. So it's not really like your character getting much stronger, but getting a wider variety of skills that will allow you to dodge, counter, or rather counteract the increasingly strong enemies that you face, from like literal bugs all the way up to the equivalent of like a super security guard as you get further through the game. I love the progression.
Yeah, it's like it was just like the perfect like little taste of every little system, right? Like it was not too little where you were like, why did they even put this in here? Like I'm never going to use this. And it wasn't too much where it was like overwhelming. Even like the trinket system, which you have all these little trinkets that you equip that kind of give you little special effects or boosts or what have you. And even that, like I had a lot of trinkets, but it was still pretty fun to like mix and match, where I was like, okay, maybe there was a boss I was having trouble with, or maybe just like my overall strategy was kind of changing later in the game, and I would like swap out my trinkets to either have more health or make it easier to time certain things or whatever. Like there's probably like 18 plus trinkets that you can equip, and like my only like little nitpick is like I really wish that I had slightly more, I don't even know what you call it, like little points to equip more trinkets, because I would love to experiment with more, but even that system I felt like pretty welcome in the game. It didn't overstay its welcome at all.
Yeah, as you gain levels, you would essentially get, like you said, trinket points, and each of your trinkets had a number of points that you needed to equip them. Again, this is very similar to other Mario RPGs, or at least one or two of the other Mario RPGs, and again, I really found myself exploring the overworld, because we may have not said this explicitly. Your character makes their way through, let's call it 4 different biomes that are not enormous, but they're fairly large. Imagine that, you know, each biome is at least 6 to 10 different screens that you're making your way through. They encourage exploration because that's how you end up finding more trinkets, some of which are pretty OP, and I can't even imagine not having them when I finish the game. But there was a fun amount of variety, and I guess that's like you. That's kind of my only criticism is like I wish there was more, like slightly more trinkets. There was, I don't know the exact number of mushrooms, but let's say there's like 30 different varieties of mushrooms that you can just go around the world and find. Everything from like a literal poop mushroom that you just throw at your enemy for damage, to healing, reviving, HP up tons. I just wish there was maybe like 30% more trinkets.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think we need to go over the story in depth, but the macro is that, you know, they're looking for what was the name of the Hungus Bungus, or what was the name of the big...
Something like that.
Essentially, you're just trying to find this mushroom throughout. You get stuck into a conflict with a megacorp who's essentially dumping waste everywhere, which is causing problems in forests, water, cities, etc. And it's your job by the end to beat that corp. It's not immediately evident that that's what you're doing, but that is kind of the thing that you're eventually tasked with.
Man, I really love this story. Like, it kind of it reminded me a lot of things. Like, there's
Jumbo
a movie
Fungo.
with Jumbo Fungo. That's what it is. Jumbo Fungo. In the search for the Jumbo Fungo, it kind of reminded me a little bit of a show that came out last year called Common Side Effects, which Adult Swim, but kind of the same type of theme of like, it had this like really interesting take on like teetering on the line of like, okay, this is just kind of like, is realistic-ish, and everybody realizes that what's going on is kind of absurd, but then they kind of go along with it. So it kind of makes for some really fun comedic scenarios where people are like, oh, like, bro, did that pig just talk? And he's like, oh, well, you know, that's just kind of, that's what happened. And everybody's like, oh, okay, all right, well, we'll go along with it now. So like, I don't know what the deal is with like truffle hunting pigs and the whole hermit thing, because there's a Nicolas Cage movie as well called Pig, I believe, where it's literally like his pig gets kidnapped or something like that, and he has to go out with John Wick to get his pig back, which apparently
so funny.
My fiance said it was a good movie. But yeah, so it just reminded me of a lot of things. Cheech and Chong, I don't know, I assume there's some inspiration there as well, just because of the aesthetic, but yeah.
I think the devs, at least in one of the interviews that I had read, had also unsurprisingly touted Earthbound as one of their inspirations, and so that also plays. The thing that maybe surprised me was the perspective when you get into the battle. So it is top down when you are exploring the overworld, and your characters are real cute, and a lot of the folks every character looks unique, and then there's a lot of uniqueness in the enemy variety. But what surprised me is sort of the behind the back, over the shoulder perspective in the battles. It works surprisingly well, but I think when I first had seen this game, I thought that it was going to rely more on WarioWare micro games, because I had seen the special moves and how you kind of have to input everything. So I was like, oh, is this kind of like Earthbound with WarioWare? It is not WarioWare, but it definitely, I guess you could say that there's a frantic pace to the battle that occasionally hits some of the same highs as the WarioWare.
Yeah, most of the minigame aspect comes from using your special moves, which are, you know, I would say hit or miss in terms of like their effectiveness. I think there is at least one that is like way stronger than every other one, in my opinion. But I guess it's all skill based, depending on how good you are at the specific mini games. But yeah, most of it is kind of just like your standard kind of like turn based combat style gameplay.
Was there any trinket that you, in thinking back, that you would not have been able to beat the game without?
Like thinking back, it's kind of hard to say. The one, I don't like remember the name specifically, but there was one trinket that made the timings a little bit easier to hit, which I mean, once I got it, I kind of just kept it on, so I don't even know what it was like if I would have took it off at the end of the game. But the end of the game, the timings are kind of tough, and it was kind of like life or death, where they were easy enough where I could say, oh, I can rely on myself to come clutch and like keep the turn alive because I'm blocking or I'm parrying or whatever. But if it was any faster, it would have been a really tough like last few battles, because the timing meter was kind of zooming, and they did a decent amount of damage if you weren't able to block it all.
Yeah, if you really took damage, later in the game, you end up, coming against the corporation that is trying to just extract as much value out of this mushroom as possible. And the baddies have, let's say your hit can do 9 to 15 damage. Each enemy has like 120 HP, and you're facing off against 3 of them, and one of their hits can take off a quarter of your life bar. So if you don't have the right trinkets, if you aren't dodging, you will not make your way through this. You really have to, as much as I want to say this game is the closest thing we've gotten to Expedition 33 in the last year, you've really got to learn your parries and your dodges, because if you don't, you're going to be in trouble.
What about you? Did you have any like life-saving trinkets?
I mean, I just think that the initial trinket that you get is the little glasses one, which tells you the health of your enemies.
Oh yeah, that's pretty
even as I
clutch.
went, I'm I think I got into the low teens for levels, which means I had maybe 12 to 13 trinket points. Most trinkets take 1 to 3 trinket points to equip. That one with the glasses always took 1 trinket point, and I just by the end of the game was like, I cannot not have this equipped. And there's no natural skill. It's needed all the way through. And maybe that's part of the comedy is like, Hermit needs his glasses or else he can't see shit,
It's pretty funny. That's one of the things where I'm like, depending on the game, okay, I get it. It's a little skill, Kingdom Hearts, whatever. This one I'm like, just go ahead and give it to us, because you do need the health bar. I mean, I guess you don't, because you could just keep swinging until the thing's dead. But in this game, the attack damage is pretty static. Like, I can kind of figure out how much damage I'm going to do, unless it's going to be a crit or something like that. So I can calculate how many moves I win in if everything goes right, which is why it's pretty crucial for me to be able to see like the actual hit point number, which is why I'm like, you probably can assume that I'm going to keep this on the entire time. So maybe just make it permanent.
Yeah. Even with some of because there was some variability to the amount of damage that you could do. You could take a little mushroom and make yourself stronger, and Pig had powers where he could charge or hit one enemy versus like multiple enemies. But yeah, to your point, it's you set yourself on a path each turn, and you kind of know exactly what you're going to do. You just have to like get in a rhythm and not lock it in, but you know what you do every turn. You just have to pass the skill check every time you go through.
Yep, exactly.
I guess I wanted to see here, this game is a little 6-hour game. We've talked about the story, we've talked about the gameplay and some of the systems underneath it, what it looks like. Anything else you want to cover with Hermit and Pig? And if not, I have one last question for you.
No, I think we've covered everything. This game is going to be highly underrated. This might be one of the most underrated games of the year, in my opinion, because not a lot of people are talking about it, and I just think it's really well rounded. All of the things we talked about, like even with my nitpicks, I was surprised by almost every aspect. It was all better than what I had assumed going into it. The gameplay, the writing, even just the characters, the story, all of that stuff. It was way better. So it's going to go under the radar. I highly suggest, if it sounds good to you, give it a try.
Okay, my last question is a follow-up to that.
Yes.
It is December 2026. You have played tons of games throughout the year, and Hoop, you know exactly where I'm going through this. This is going to come out in the summertime of 2026. So tell me, does this land on your personal game of the year? Just take a bet, because I know you're not a fortune teller, but do you think it'll make it or not?
I think there's a good chance. Like, it'll be probably closer to the end, just based off of like how we're already trending with the stuff we're playing. Like, there's been a lot of good games already, but I think there's a good chance it'll make it. Like, it meets all the criteria.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Where this one very much, cops the energy of some of the like 7 to 10 picks that I've had in past years for my favorite games of the year. I think the one thing that goes against it is the recency bias thing, where folks who are making lists in the gaming sphere sometimes forget about the games that they played in January or February. So hopefully we can make people remember that Hermit and Pig is a dang good video game.
And I'll tell you right now, if this was last year, it probably would have been. It definitely would have been on my top 10 last year, and it probably would have gotten closer to the middle of the pack. I would argue. Like, it's kind of a bold statement, but yeah, it's that good.
Yeah, that is a bold statement. A bold statement to end our show about Hermit and Pig. Joseph, a fun, fast one. If folks want to find you on the internet, where is the best place they can do that?
Best place, Crossplay Conversations. You guys already know Jacob's voice. You hear it all the time. I'm sure if you don't listen to Crossplay Conversations already, what are you doing? Go ahead and check it out. But if you only want to hear me, Yeah, what are you doing? If you're tired of Jacob, though, because, I mean, you listen to this all the time, maybe you're tired of his voice, youtube.com/@can'tpause. That's probably where most of my content is, or can'tpause.com if you like reading written stuff. But that's boring. It's 2026, so we all watch and listen nowadays, you know what I'm saying? So youtube.com/@can'tpause, or player if you want to hear people talk about nonsense, just pure nonsense.
Love. And just so you know, this would be number 10 on my list last year if it was in last year, I think. This would be yeeting ball pit off that list. But thanks again for coming on the show today. We close, as we close all of our shows, by reminding you that all of our show announcements go on our Blue Sky, leftbehindgameclub.bsky.social. If you want to join in on the conversation and maybe yell at me and Joseph about how cool of a game Hermit and Pig is, you can find us both actually in the Left Behind Game Club Discord, leftbehindgame.club/discord. And then if you love the show, do us two favors. Send it to a friend, because that's how people hear about podcasts, and give us a review on your podcasting platform of choice, because it really truly does help. You can find me on Blue Sky at jacob.bsky.social. That's where I'm posting most of my nonsense, and you can also find me on Crossplay Conversations, like you said, Mr. Hooper. We close with shout out Mike Ruffalo, and that, my friends, is one less game left behind.
You ever notice how some games don't need 100 hours to leave a mark?
Absolutely. I'm Michael.
And I'm Marcus. We're the host of Tiny Game Chronicles, a podcast that celebrates games that are small in scope, but huge in heart.
Every other week, we dive into games that you can finish in a few hours, but think about for days after.
We've been exploring these hidden gems, and every time it feels like uncovering something extraordinary.
So whether you're short on time or just love discovering new worlds, join us.
Listen to Tiny Game Chronicles on your favorite podcast app, or catch us on YouTube.
Tiny Game Chronicles, where every other week we discuss games that are quick plays,
but epic journeys.